What's going on, beautiful people? Today, I thought we could take a look at a pretty basic and simple topic, which is sidechaining. More specifically, this video is going to be about a beginner's guide on sidechaining. Now, sidechaining itself seems like a pretty self-explanatory concept, but some people have been struggling with it for some reason, so let's take a look at how to sidechain your basses in Ableton. I'm gonna create an extremely simple scenario. What we have here is a pretty simple oscilloscope called SideScope, which logged me out of my account again. Don't know why that's happening. We have a pretty basic bass loop I've created. Now, ideally, if you're in a mix working on a track, you would need drums. So let's get some drums. I have this beautiful kick over here. Let's put one on each bar. Let's find a snare. Okay, make sure it's not warped. And now we have this. That's a big mess, and you would be right. So what I'm gonna do is create a group. I'm just gonna mimic how I would do it in a track scenario. You would have a group called drums. Let's just call this drums. Let's make it one color so it's not confusing. And then we have a separate audio channel called sidechain. I created this group because usually you should have all of your basses in one group and your sub as well, but that depends. Let's just call this the drop group, and let's make another one intro and another one called effects. Depending on how organized you are and how many different processing chains you want to use on these groups, you can simply route all of these into the sidechain audio channel. To do this in Ableton, this one is pretty simple. You just have to click here on the input output tab. And if you don't see this, you can just click on the IO button right here. Just click on where it says master and make sure it goes into your sidechain. You can set this to all of the groups. So in this scenario, all of the groups themselves act like an umbrella, and they will collect all the channels inside them and feed them through the sidechain channel. In order to hear them now, because now we don't hear them, we have to enable in, so the channel itself, the sidechain channel, will play back the input. Now we can hear it coming through the sidechain channel. But now we still don't have sidechain, so we have a lot of options. I'm going to show you all of them. Our most basic one is automating the channel volume of the sidechain channel itself. Let's just create a quick little automation right here. I'm just going to do something like that and just duplicate this. This is a viable method, although I don't really like it because it's really finicky if you want to set up a look ahead, meaning a pre-fade, so the drum transients can stay clean. It's doable, definitely, but I really don't like the way that works. So let me show you another way. There's the traditional compressor route. In this case, we're going to take a compressor and make it super aggressive, meaning short release, short attack, and then infinite ratio, and then bring the threshold down. Also, you can open it up like that and enable sidechain, which will basically drive the compressors. So as you probably know already, compressors make things quiet. And then with the makeup gain, you can make them loud again with the previously quiet parts. You can set up a compressor with a sidechain signal, which will mean that the signal that goes into the sidechain input will drive parameters, and it will affect the original sound that you put the compressor on. You can set the kick drum as a driver for the compressor, and now each time a kick drum hits, it will dip the audio levels of the sidechain channel. Obviously, in this case, you have to use two compressors, and you can run into a whole bunch of different kind of issues with the compressors, release times, the algorithm that they use to determine the loudness. You can use RMS, which is roughly 300 milliseconds, or peak for compression. This is all good and well, but in my opinion, electronic dance music needs something that is much more precise. Because of that, we can combine a couple different things. For the longest time, people have been using Kickstart or ShaperBox or Volume Shaper. I have ShaperBox 3 installed, so we're gonna check out this old school method. So originally, in a lot of tutorials, you might see this method where you can draw a precise volume automation, which you can set to 1/16, which is roughly the length of our kick drum, and we can trigger this via MIDI. So we can enable MIDI right here, create a new channel underneath our sidechain without any synthesizers on it, create a blank MIDI and just put a MIDI note on each. Now we have to feed the MIDI into the sidechain, and if you set the ShaperBox up correctly with a one-shot timing, it will basically trigger the envelope. Now, ShaperBox can do this with transient detection. In that case, you don't need a separate MIDI track and you don't need to worry about copy pasting these things. But ShaperBox is relatively cheap, but still you have to pay for it. I have the perfect solution for the people who don't want to spend a single dime on music production. There's this plugin called Borrasca's Sidechainer, which is similar to DuckBuddy, which a couple of people might know. This is Borrasca's Sidechainer. I'm gonna leave a link down in the description. It's a phenomenal tool for music producers. Borrasca's Sidechainer basically lets you see the time window you set, and it actually shows you the waveform of your kick drum, so you can set the perfect amount of sidechain every single time. It also has pre-fades and detection settings and a multiband version as well. So I highly recommend downloading this and giving it a shot if you're on Ableton. If you're not on Ableton, you can still use the audio detection feature of ShaperBox. In order to set up Sidechainer, you can just drop it on the sidechain channel, select the kick drum, and then take a listen. Now, once you've hit play, you can just simply shape it to be the exact same as your kick drum. Maybe curve it a little. If you want to be extra cautious, you can push the pre-fade slider up. It goes up to 10 milliseconds. And now you have perfect sidechain, clinically clean. If you double it and select the snare, it might re-trigger depending on your sample. So I might actually need a ghost sample that can trigger the volume envelope, but it mostly works. Like 9 out of 10 times it works flawlessly. For snares, I usually just leave room for the body and then the tail just kind of blends into the track. But yeah, this is perfect sidechain. Now you can fill up that space that the kick takes up with hi-hats. So I'm just gonna use one of my hat loops. Also, another little trick for y'all is if you use reverb on your snare. Let's say we use a snare reverb. The compressor might re-trigger because of the reverb. It's not re-triggering right now, but if it is doing it for you, you can tweak the detection settings. But I think a much better way and a much more clever way of doing it is just setting the mixer position to pre-effects. In that case, the plugin will watch the incoming signal to the channel, so it will actually react to the raw sample and not the post-effects version of it. So that's pretty neat in my opinion. Yeah, that's sidechaining for you in less than roughly X amount of minutes. I would still probably experiment with all of these methods and just see which one of these fits your production best. I actually left a bonus sidechaining technique for those who stick around until the end of the video, but this is not the most useful one, it's just an interesting one. So instead of using a compressor or any of these plugins I just showed you, you can actually use a reverse gate to drive a sidechain. I did that before. I have songs released with this. It's working, but if you want to take the extra step and be as much precise as you can be or you want to be, I recommend the Borrasca version, definitely. So I'm just gonna select our kick drum and let's see what happens. It only lets through the actual bass sound and every single thing that's routed into it if the kick is playing. If you click flip, it does the exact opposite. So you can set the threshold and the attack, the hold, the release, the floor, and actually the look ahead as well. But as I've said, this is not the most accurate way of doing it. To be completely transparent though, I would still use the compressor method if I'm working on an instrumental type beat or an instrumental piece. For example, I do a little bit of mixing myself for my uncle. He has a garage rock band. You can balance the kick drum and the bass guitar really well with a compression sidechain to really get those peaks and transients of the kick drum punched through without obliterating the mix. So that's one use for it, and it it works much better compared to these transient detection stuff. It sounds a little more fluid, it sounds a little more natural, if that makes sense. It's not that clinical, which is actually key if you want to make good mixes of instrumental and real life stuff, in my opinion. But yeah, that was it for today. I'm planning on a super cool video with a big free download next week, so stay tuned for that. I'm also gonna post an oversampled tutorial review because he was requested a lot. Thank you guys for hanging out with me today, and thank you for the patrons and for every single one of you who've been liking, sharing, and commenting. Stay safe out there, and let me know what you guys want to see next. Bye bye. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to check out my website for a lot of high quality Serum and Vital presets and drum samples. You can also support me on Patreon, where I upload bass music specific tutorial content every single month. Peace.